This one, I don't know, dude. How do you want to start?
Ready? Okay. So today, it's Thursday, so today and tomorrow, we're going to have you guys work through a week project. And this week's project is Python to-do list CLI. So the purpose of this project is to actually give you practice using Python and a database. Later when we do a web app, there's more stuff there. We're going to keep it really simple. There's no real libraries that we're going to use today, other than just a few very simple ones. CLI stands for Command List Interface. So when we build a web app later, there'll be like of course, like buttons and an HTML page. Today, we're just going to run it from the command line, from the terminal. So that's how we'll keep track of our thing. Do you have it running? Can you show the... Like, can you run the app down here?
Do you want it to be? Yeah.
Okay. So here's like a complete version of the app, and so this is the terminal. So you can just walk through like what the updates today.
Okay, so you guys can see that we're going to be using a terminal, a new tool on the left called SQLite. When we click,
Wait, just show the app first. I'll walk through it.
Okay, fine. If in our terminal window we run Python, the name of this file todos.python.py and list, we'll see that we have a list of to-dos that are saved in our database. Currently, we have 2. We can also run Python todos.py --help to see a prompt which tells us what to do. Like it tells us what we're allowed to do, what types of commands we can issue. For example, we can add one. So I'll copy this command, I'll paste, and I'll say demo to do app for El Captain. We see that this ran. We got some output from our terminal window, acknowledging that it ran successfully. But now we need to check our results. We need to check our work. So a few moments ago, you guys saw that we had two to-dos. But if we run this query, we can now see that we have one more additional.
And then you can run Python todos.py list.
Python 3 todos.py.list. And this will also update.
So this is the interface that's going to kind of talk to our database. So now all the different pieces, like Lo was explaining. So the new thing we're going to introduce is something called SQLite. So SQLite, as you might guess from the name, is a very simple version of a SQL database. So most databases, including the one that we'll focus on this class after this week, is called PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL, I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's a more robust database. It's actually what lots of big sites use. All the big names will use that kind of database. That's its own program, its own server. It's a very it's a real program that runs on your computer. We'll have to install that next week. SQLite, in contrast, is a really, really simple database system. It actually is just a file. So can you just do ls in this directory? ls, remember, is like, showing you the constant directory. All the database is kept in this file, database.sqlite3. Can you do a cat on that file? So cat is how you print out things to the terminal. And you'll see this is like the contents of the database. It's highly optimized, it's all jumbled together, so you can't just read it from text. So it's not like an Excel file, it's not like that. There's a special format because it's doing lots of things to be efficient. But it's still all in one file. And that format is called SQLite, and different programs can read and write from it. SQLite is really, really popular for lots of things. So on your phone especially, like all the apps on your phone will generally have their own SQLite database associated with them. So when you're storing small-ish amounts of data, like Facebook's, or maybe not Facebook, some of the chat apps will store all their, like WhatsApp will store all their stuff in a SQLite database, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. But lots of apps will use this. It's really popular for like your refrigerator that has a database on it, which it almost always does. We'll use SQLite. It's one of the most widely used databases in the world. It ships everywhere. And for us, it's a little bit simpler. There's some things you can't do in SQLite that you can do in Postgres, which is why next week we'll switch over to Postgres. But for a simple app like taking your to-dos, this should be fine. To use SQLite, so because we can't read from it very easily, So you see this little window on the right where he ran that SQL query, select star from to-dos. Visual Studio Code has an extension. So if you go to, let me open the thing, yeah. Search for SQLite, and it's that one. It's been downloaded 44 million times, 440, yeah, this one is the one that you want. So install this, and if you install this extension, go to can you open the file navigator? And you right click on SQLite 3. So this database, you'll now get a new thing called Open Database here. So if you click that, it'll pop this guy open here. And here you can see that it'll show you the structure of the database. This Explorer is able to understand this format. And you can see all the things, and then, yeah, most importantly, you hit the play button. And it runs queries here. So most of the time you just want to do select queries to see the database.
You guys will notice that if you update your to-dos, right? Like right now, I'm gonna run a demo after Charles finished speaking. This does not update immediately. We need to query the database again. So if you see that we hit this button, we're gonna see a fourth to-do appear. There we go.
And you can also just run SQL in there too. I think you can just change that. Can you change that? Just in there.
It's one of these ones. Oops.
There's a way to like type. Hit command. So if you want to just run a command Control Shift P. So Command Shift P or Control Shift P on Windows will always open the command palette, and you can do like SQLite quick query is what I want. So we'll do a quick query. We'll choose database SQLite 3, and we can do all sorts of things like select. And then you guys should all be good on SQL from yesterday, yeah? Select star from to-dos where, I don't know, where ID is greater than 2. I don't know. Thank you. And it would run that. So you can run any sort of SQL query. You can also do the inserts, updates, and creates, or inserts and updates, create database. Those things there as well. So after this, you should be able to build simple stuff for the database. Yes, so the thing we're going to do today is write todos.py. It's the program that talks to the database and understands what you're trying to tell it. It parses these commands, inserts the right thing in the database, lists the database, things like that. Can you open the assignment page? So if you scroll down, so here are the features that we want you guys to fill in. So the user can run your program with command lines and see all to-dos, and there's a whole bunch there. So todos.py is going to handle this.
We're going to be building our app inside of one file, todos.py. Yeah. Sometimes we do that in class to learn, and that's actually what we need to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty simple application, but there's a lot of things to do about the database.
Yeah. I was going to say, once again, guys, to-dos apps. Programmers love to do apps, okay? Because you get to do all types of stuff with them. Create, read, update, restore. We got to figure out how to do that.
Yes. And so we'll use only one library today that's not built it's not built into Python. It's a library from Google. It's called Python Fire. It's not really that important to understand what this library does. It's really, really simple. It just gives you a nice interface to the command line interface. So if I say Python 3 todos.py add, it helps parse, call the add function. So the documentation is pretty simple on this. It's just like here. So if you at the top, we just import this library, and then later we can call this one function here. So explain this hello world application. We're running everything in one file. So in Python, there's a few special things you can do, and this is one of them that you might see from time to time. If _name equals main, that means if someone ran me directly. So if someone called Python filename.py, then this is true. Name is main. That's like the main function. This is a holdover from C. If anyone's done C, it's like in func main. Java also has a main function. It just runs this command, and this command will just map different words to different functions. So more robust example is here. So like, we're gonna do something like this. So you just call fire, and then you pass it a dictionary. This is just like an object. Dictionaries are objects, same as JavaScript and Python. You have a key on the left, a value on the right. We're gonna say add maps to the add function. Add function is defined here. Multiply is multiply. And actually the arguments get automatically passed along. So you can call this function like add 1020. It calls add and passes 1020 automatically. So there's no magic in this library other than just helping us with the kind of UI plumbing. Otherwise, there's ways in Python you can access the command line arguments, sys.argv, sys.argc, all these things, but with this library you don't have to do that.
Do you have any questions?
Okay.
How we make a table like
Yeah. Good. See, I think you can start just walking through it now.
Okay, I'm gonna demo, guys.
So he'll start building. So Lo will start building the first, the first few requirements of this app. And the question that, unfortunately, SQLite has really weird alter column support. It's not really supported by SQLite. So while you're developing this app, if you need to change the structure of your database, just delete the file and create it again. So just delete database.sqlite. When you get to next week with more complicated databases, we won't do that anymore, obviously, because you can't just delete database every time you want to change something once you have a real deployed application. But for us, it's okay for now.
Okay, so let's get going, guys. You guys can see that I'm inside of my favorite folder in the world. I'm inside my favorite folder in the world, my El Captain folder. So we're gonna move into a new directory that I just created called P to-do list. P is short for what, guys? Python. I'm gonna create a new file called todos.py. This is where we're gonna write our code and do our magic. I'm now going to open my code editor. A little bit disorienting. Okay, so we just have an empty Python project. Move this over here. 1 second. So we need to import some libraries and /packages things from Python to use. We did the same thing in React. Remember, at the top of all our files, we would import something. So right now, we need something called OS for operating system and SQLite 3 for the database. You guys will need to run a command. What is it? Actually, I think I need to run it.
I think it's called Google Fire or something.
I forgot.
Look up go back to GitHub.
This one?
How do we install it? Just search for pip. Pip install Fire. So pip is the same thing from React. NPM and pip are basically the same thing.
They accomplish the same goals. Get some files off the internet.
It's worked. It's fine. You already have Fire.
I don't have to do this locally for each folder.
Yeah, there's some difference between pip and NPM, but we'll get into those next week. The one big difference is pip by default is global.
Okay, so
It's like npm install -g, but pip just does that.
1 second. Okay, the next thing we now need to do is define the file that we want to save our database in and open up a connection to it. Okay, so this isn't amazingly complicated. All we gotta do is define a new variable, and we're gonna call this one default path. The next thing we're gonna do is call a function that's hidden within these libraries that we just imported. So we're gonna call os.path.join. What is that? We're gonna call it, what is it? It's a function, okay? So, we know that whenever we call a function, we can pass in an argument. The first argument that we're gonna pass here or we're gonna pass to this function call is a string. And what we're gonna send it is a secret value. I don't know if it's a secret value, okay? We're gonna send it a function that is calling a secret value. I explained this in the lab, you guys are gonna read this, okay? So you guys are gonna see that we have this thing called underscore underscore file underscore underscore. It's just globally available like process or console. So that's the first argument. The second argument is the name of the file that we want to save it as. So we're gonna put in database.sqlite3, okay? So we're gonna be using this momentarily. So let's just go ahead and test to make sure we know what we're doing. So we do print, and then we're gonna see what this is. So I'm gonna open up my console, and I'm gonna run python3 todos.py. And what's this thing right here that gets printed out? Basically just something that we're gonna call in a moment. Okay, the next part of the thing that we need to do is we need to define a string. And we're gonna use some Python. And I'm just gonna copy and paste this over. This one isn't too complicated. So I'm just gonna show it to you guys. So here you can see that we're just creating a new table, and the table has some certain values and certain data types, right? So for example, in ID, we define a column called ID, and its value is an integer, of data type integer, and this is the primary key of this record. What table? Oh yeah, my bad. I should explain this line first, okay? Line 12. What are we saying here? We're saying, hey guys, hey SQL, create this table if it doesn't exist. Create the table if it does not exist. The last thing that we're doing is we're naming the table that we want to create. The next few lines, 13 through 16, we're defining the columns, the data types of those columns, and something like a default argument. What's the default argument, guys? Say again? Okay, we're learning. Yes, it means that this is the value it will always be if we do not explicitly define it. So you know how a second ago, whenever I added a to-do, I didn't say, is it complete or is it incomplete? By default, it's automatically incomplete. Okay? So we oftentimes do that, guys. We can make certain assertions about our apps. Yes?
Is Python case sensitive? Like when it says create table if not exist.
So this,
is a capital and then to-dos is in small letters. So I'm thinking if it's sensitive if we don't write.
So it's like what Charles said yesterday. This is SQL, right? This will be evaluated as SQL.
Oh, okay.
This string will be like, we're gonna take this and in a moment inject it. We're gonna inject it somewhere and then it's going to execute. So this is going to evaluate as SQL code. So just like SQL, the case is not important, or it's not important. Some people, so example, the guide I read yesterday said like, look, do it. Everyone wants you to do it. The SQL commands, capitalize them. That being said, these are columns right here. So this is why these words right here do not follow the same rules. Right here. This is a column, and this value right here is what? It's the default value. So whenever we create a new to-do, you're going to see that all of them have the status of incomplete.
Yeah, it just makes it easier to keep track of what's like the names of things and what's the SQL part. That's why we keep these capitals, I think. You don't have to. The other things worth noting is so that first line 13, ID integer primary key, 99.9% of the time, every table that you use in SQL will have that first line. So you almost always want the primary key to be an integer and ID. So it's like we did yesterday when there's a student ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a purchase order ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that is. And that's what you use to kind of link tables together, is usually the ID. Primary key just means that's like the thing that you look up that's going to be unique, and it's going to be the thing that you use most often to refer to this field. So the database will optimize for that. And the other things too is the not nulls there. So another thing that SQL does for us is you can give different constraints about the structure of the database to make sure you don't get like bad data in your database. So if we say not null, that means if I try to insert a to-do and I don't specify a value for body, or I specify null value, the database will refuse to accept that row. It'll say no, there's a constraint that says there's not null. There's a lot of other constraints you can use too. So you can do you can do different things here, but not null is the most common one.
Do you guys remember what else we called these? What are they called? Validations.
Validations.
Right? This is a form of validations. We do this everywhere, on front end, back end. I remember Charles complaining about one time, like that he made a Facebook post about it. He complaining about it. He's like, this company didn't do back end validations. I hacked them. He opened up HTML, he changed it, and he was like, submit, and then he crashed the application.
I did that a long time ago. Yeah. So like, for example, in your database, you might say like password cannot be null for someone, things like that. So your app along the way should check to see that. Like your web app should check that someone put in a thing. Your server should check that someone put in a thing. But the database is always the safest.
That makes sense. It's statistics you have to validate too. But no.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, this SQL.
Yeah, this just gives you a sense of security that no matter what, I'll never, ever, ever have a to-do in my database that has a null body. It's kind of nice.
Okay, so moving forward.
Question.
Yes.
What is the triple double code?
Good question. It's just, this is just SQL syntax. So if I did like a regular single quote, hello equals. Oops. You can't have line breaks in here. It doesn't highlight. But if I do 3 quotes, I can do whatever I want. You can have multi-line strings. Regularly, if you have the single quotes, you can only do 1 line of text. So that's what the triple quotes are. You do the connection too.
Yeah. Okay, so a moment ago you guys saw that we defined a default path, and this path is going to be pointing towards a file inside our working directory, okay? Inside of this folder, okay? Now we need to do something with that path. We're going to pass it as an argument to another function call. So for example, we're going to call SQLite 3 inside of this dictionary. There is a function called connect, and then we're going to pass it the default path. This is where we're going to get the connection to our database. Okay, this is where the connection lives. So we want to bookmark it. We want to say, hey, I want to save this for later. So I'm going to call it con right here. Okay, so
Like constant?
con as in connection.
Okay.
Yeah. So we imported some libraries. Let's just recap. We imported some libraries. We performed some basic Python magic to figure out what our path was. We passed that path to a connection, and we defined a string, which is a SQL query. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is use this. We're going to call something called cursor, and then we're going to bookmark it for use momentarily. Sorry guys, I know this is a lot of setup work, okay? Sometimes we got to do some setup work. So we're going to store this in a variable called cursor, CUR. So inside our connection, we're looking for something called cursor. We call that function. The cursor is how we actually perform operations on our database, okay? So we're going to do cur.execute. We'll call it.
The connection is like a connection, and the cursor is like the worker inside the connection that goes around and does things.
Yeah.
It's like the cursor is your little database worker, runs around, sends things. Later, we won't use cursors are a pretty low-level database construct, but what they're actually for is to keep track of where you are in a database. You might tell it, you keep a cursor because like, hey, give me the next 10, give me the next 10, give me the next 10. And the cursor will keep track of where you are, or like what command you just executed. You can kind of tell the cursor sometimes to undo, things like that. We won't use any of those features. All we'll do is, in this app, is we'll just call execute.
Okay, when we call execute, we need to pass it an argument. So you guys have seen, what have we been doing this whole time, guys? What are we doing all right here?
We're setting up.
we're defining some variables and we're passing them as arguments to other function calls, right? So in default path, we define a variable. This is a string. We pass it to connect. Okay, we get a connect, and then we call cursor, and then from calling that, we get this cursor. Cursor we call execute. What's the one variable that we define that we haven't used yet? SQL. So we're going to pass this. Okay, and what this is going to do is that this is going to create a database if it does not exist. It says so on line 9, right there. Okay, so I'm going to open up the file explorer, and you guys will see right now how many files we have. Okay, so if we execute our Python script, is this our app right now? In a moment, we're going to see that a new file is created. So we can run python3 todos.py, and bam, there we go. This was created. This is our database right here. So I'm going to right-click it and do Open Database. And you guys can see that I already downloaded this plugin called SQLite Explorer, and it popped up. If I click it, I can click the database, click to-dos, and then run this command right here. Not run the command, show this table by clicking this button right here, okay? The play button. If I click play, bam. We have a list of to-dos right here. And how many do we have, guys?
0.
0, okay.
You can see the structure on the left, so the structure looks right.
Yes, right here. Obviously, guys, what would have happened if we did something like here?
What?
What would this do, guys? Come on, what you guys thinking about this? Because I didn't write all the instructions yet, so I'm gonna need you guys to know how to do this. Well, at least have some idea what the hell we're doing right here. What is that doing?
Create a column. The default is yes. So you always get it.
Yeah, yeah, that's basically what's going on. Okay, so basically this is where we define it. This is a SQL thing, okay? In a moment, whenever we start writing functions, we're gonna be doing this exact thing right here. Line 18. We need to use this cursor. We need to execute some SQL. Okay, so you guys will see that what Charles just said a second ago, that in Python, there's this magical thing that you guys will see all the time. It's called if name equals main, then do something. Okay, and this will always execute when the user runs Python, the name of the file. So I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, who here knows if this will be true or false? Who here thinks this will be true? Who thinks line 21 will execute? Will it execute? No, so no one here thinks it will execute. All you guys think this won't execute, right? Okay, so let's see it. So I'm going to choose a superhero. I'm going to say Superman is gay.
What's with you?
I don't know, I just want to say something. So we're now going to run it. And we can see that Superman is in fact gay. So this is basically, I would say additionally on top of what Charles said, is that if you guys also write Go, you guys will see this, okay? Some programming languages have this like default function that we have to write in every single application. And it's called the main function, just like Charles said. So see.
Because Python files, you can also include them as libraries, like other files can include other files. So, but if this file is called directly from Python executable, then this is true.
Yeah. So this thing you just have to memorize. Okay. All right. So that's actually not that interesting. We need to do something else. So when we run our application, let's go ahead and wrap everything inside of a try except. Guys, who knows what this does? Someone tell me they have an idea what this does. What is a try catch in JS?
We expect an error. But we don't want the program to stop.
Exactly. This will wrap any code that we think may fail. If this fails, then we're gonna do something else. And so whatever goes inside try, if this fails, then we'll run something inside of our inside of the except. So what I'm expecting, so I'm gonna go ahead and just tell you the problem that you guys are gonna run into is that you guys are not going to pass correct arguments on the command line, and that's what we're gonna guard against. So it's gonna be an index error. If an index error occurs, we're gonna do something. Okay, we're gonna say error occurred. Right now, you guys cannot see this crash yet, but in a moment, we're going to see it crash. So, what are we wrapping? What we need to do if we want to be able to work with our to-do list is we need to capture our users' input. And right now, like what we just said a second ago, we don't have buttons. The only thing we have right here is this console. So what can we do in here? We don't have any buttons. We can type, right? We can type into this thing right here, right? So whenever a user types, we need to capture what they're typing, right? So what the hell does that mean? What does he mean by that? Okay. So we'll see. Let's enter a print, and we'll say my argument after the file name is, and inside of here, what do we put? Well, there's another magically available thing. Not really magically available. We imported it at the top. Oh, my bad. My bad. No. This one is magically available. I forget which ones are magically available, which ones we had to import. So inside of here, we're going to do system.argv1. Okay. So inside of this dictionary is basically an object, right? There is, what is this? An array. Exactly. Inside this dictionary, there's an array. And inside this array, what value are we looking for? The second value. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And I'm going to run Python 3 to-dos.py. Kung is thinking today. What do you guys expect to see happen? I think we may have an error. Actually, I do need to import this. Fuck. I look bad, guys. Sorry. Okay, we do need to import sys. Okay. So, guys, we're gonna see that Kung is thinking today is going to print to the screen on line 23. Okay. Watch. My argument after the file name is Kung is thinking today. Where'd that come from, guys? From this magical thing right here. Okay. Right. We can send in many of these if we wanted. So we change this to 2, we say Python 3, to-dos.py, blue, red, for example. Okay, so we're just capturing the input from our users. We need to capture that. Is that clear, guys? Who here understands what I just said?
Where's the index pulling from?
What index are you talking about?
This is 1 and 2.
So this is just something that's magically available?
Maybe you can just print this argv for them.
Print.
So 1 and 2 and 3, well, what's the difference?
No, just the whole thing, just argv.
Okay. That, you mean?
Yeah. So argv is the arguments passed to the Python 3 executable. And so we called Python 3 to-dos py blue red, and everything after Python is counted as argv. Argument variables or something. I forget what argv stands for.
You guys can sometimes hear these called flags.
Flags.
On the command line, they're called flags a lot of times. Like our GitHub flag, we pass a flag, -h, etc. But basically, they're arguments. Exactly what Charles just said. They're arguments. They show up inside of our application and it's hidden inside of here. Okay, just like remember in React we had a process that had environment variables inside of it. They're hidden. Okay.
Yeah, we don't care about the argv0 because that's just going to be to-dos py. It's always going to be to-dos py. I don't care. But 1 and 2 or whatever, however many you want. What happens if you do this and you do argv3? Can you do that? Don't leave that one alone. Yeah. So the reason why we did the try catch. Yeah. So if we were expecting 3 arguments and we only got 2, but we don't want the program to crash. We want to say something nice. Later, instead of saying error occurred, we'll give the user some nice instructions on here's how you actually use this program. You should pass 2 arguments, or 3 arguments, whatever we expected.
Remember what we were doing a second ago, guys. We're typing in Python 3 to-dos.py. We want to be able to do something like add or list. Remember, okay? Sometimes users are going to fuck this up. They're not going to do it right. They're going to do add, and they're not going to tell us what they want to add.
Or the first time you run it, you're just going to run to-dos.py and hit enter. And here is like, oh, and this is when you would tell them instructions.
Yeah.
What to do.
So let's go ahead and do that actually. Let's go ahead and implement this function. So we're going to go ahead and do define show help
Is there a
menu.
system error that the machine tell us and we want to print out see? It's like
So the error that we're catching here,
because we printed the error code is we write, right? What
Yes.
if there's a system error that we want
yeah,
to see?
that's a good question. So actually what's happening is, where's mouse? Down here, so try it and you can accept different types of errors. So right now we're only catching index error, because that's one we're expecting. You can do different things. You can catch just all errors, like except error, if you just do error. You'll get all errors. And you can either, you can say that you get a variable, and I always forget the syntax here. Something like that. So, let's see, Python, exception. Sorry, so I always forget the syntax here. So if you just do accept without anything, it catches all errors. If you give them a class, it only catches that type of error. And you also can get, the actual variable, it's not what I wanted. There we go, the actual Python documents are better. So you can get sys.xinfo, that's how you get the actual error. So this is an example of, they try this and they catch different, so this one says error, this one, but you can also just get the actual error from the computer by doing something like this and try to see what it does.
Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and implement just adding a a help menu. So we're gonna say please input a. I don't want to type this out for you, so I'm just gonna copy and paste this. Okay, guys? Seriously, I don't want you guys to watch me doing this. This is stupid. It's gonna give us some meaningful, prompt to the user. Guys, this is always important. Prompt your user. Tell them what to do correctly. I hope this works. Fuck. Okay, we need to import a library called colored. I'm doing this because I like colors. You guys know me, right? How do I feel about colors? I love them. I love them. Okay, I hope this works. I'm a little concerned because right now this is the indentation doesn't look right, so I'm gonna fix it. Okay, so now if we run Python 3s, hold on. What do we need to do down here, guys? We need to call our function. So if an error and specifically an index error occurs, we're gonna call our function show help menu, and then we're gonna see some output on the screen. Okay, so we're gonna do Python 3 to do .py.
Import term color.
Did I import this?
Import. You pip install term color.
Pip install term color. Okay, yeah. Pip install term color.
This is Loy wanted to add color to his.
Yes. I want you guys all to add color too.
You need pip3 instead. Pip3.
Fuck.
So you might get these questions. So sometimes we type Python, sometimes we type Python 3. So depending on your computer, so the Macs ship with Python by default. Wait, why didn't that work?
So you can set up a virtual environment.
Yeah, we should do virtual environments. We'll do that. I want to kind of do that next week, but.
Nothing's working.
Python 3 term.
Colored.
Did you do pip3 install?
Yes, I did. Pip3 install term color.
It's using this weird Anaconda thing. You installed Anaconda in your computer.
Yes, I do have it, huh?
So do conda install. So do conda install.
One second. Conda install.
Term color.
Just with it all like that.
Sorry, there's this thing called Anaconda which we don't want to use, which you haven't used. I think that might do it.
Strange. Python 3 to use that py.
Let's do the work.
Hold on.
Wait, all your libraries are busted.
What the fuck?
I don't know why this is happening. Oops. Okay, ignore this part. I'll listen to the video forever. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank God fucking Charles is here. Seriously.
So if you have problems with that later, we can help you. So I talked about it just for a second, and Quan knows what this is. So Python does some weird things where if you install libraries with pip, it tries to install for your whole computer. But then if you have multiple versions of Python installed, Python can get really confused where you want to go. So it's made worse by the fact that Macs by default ship with Python 2.7, but we want to use Python 3. And if you Google around, one library you might be asked to install is this thing called Anaconda, which you have installed. Anaconda also then installs like a bajillion versions of Python, so this thing couldn't find which Python it wanted. The safest way to fix that is, and we'll use this extensively next week, but there's a way you can create, if you run these commands, VM, how do I like make it do the rest of the what it's?
Okay.
That doesn't do it. Okay.
Dash M.
It knows what I want already. So this sets up, a VM is a shortcut for virtual environments. And that just means, okay, for this directory, let's just create our own version of library just for this directory. The same thing that you have the node modules in NPM. NPM does that by default, Python doesn't. So if I do this, you'll see there's now a new directory called VM. And if I go in here, you'll see like all the libraries I just installed. So, I just installed Fire and Term Color. They're all kept in this just directory itself. And so it's installed into there, but the way that I tell Python to not look at the system-wide library folder is you do source env. This is like a script that just kind of replaces Python in this particular instance to say, hey, don't look at the system Python, just use a Python from this directory. But if you're new to Python, you shouldn't have these problems. Loy's having a few of these problems because he has a whole bunch of versions installed on his computer.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Charles. Really appreciate your help here. And I think the class does too. I hope you guys do appreciate him. Okay?
But also the reason why that we had all these libraries is that Loy is really into the colored output.
Okay.
So without the colored library, you can only print white, but he likes green.
I know. I'm gonna make you guys, I'm gonna, you guys gonna have to accept that about me. So I'm gonna do Python 3 to do's.py. You guys noticed what we did a second ago, right? What are we doing here? We wrote a trying to catch. Okay, we want to make sure when our application crashes, we do something that makes sense. Will this throw an error? It will not throw an error. It simply puts this, because we have this argument. We do have the argument in the index of 0. What is that? That's the name of the file. It's the it's the first argument that we pass. Obviously, once again, if I put in a 10, we don't have that. So when we run this command, our exception throws, and specifically an index error throws, and then we print out some basic instructions for what the user can do. Okay, so what's the first thing that it says? No. Okay, so my bad. Let me actually take it one step further. Okay, so the next thing that we need to figure out how to do is how to listen for a specific argument, right? How to listen to a specific argument. So we're gonna change it back to the 1 like how I originally had it, and then we're gonna stick this inside of a variable. We can call it arg1 equals that value, and then we're gonna check this value. We're gonna say, hey, if arg1 is equal to -- help, then we're going to show our help menu. I'll do that. Oops. Otherwise, what are we going to do? Otherwise, we're going to map. We're going to map all the potential arguments that we accept to a dictionary. And this dictionary we're going to pass to a library that we imported. Okay? So we're going to call fire.fire. And that is a function, right? We're going to call it. That's all we're doing. We're calling a function that we imported. We're going to pass this function an argument. What is that, guys? With this, if we were in JavaScript, what would this be called? Yes, but we're typing Python, so this is called a dictionary. This dictionary is going to have keys and values. Thank you. So we're just going to create something called add right now. Add for right now. Okay? And its value is going to be add. If I save it, I think we're going to see this thing. Man, this is so weird. VS Code behaves differently. So right now we're going to pass it a value of add right here. So we're going to define a variable called add, and then we're just going to print I'm adding a to do. Okay? It's the only thing it's going to do is going to print one line. So, what's this?
You're in Python mode, yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to run Python 3 to-dos.py add. What's going to happen, guys? If I hit enter now, what's going to happen? We're going to see line 44 execute. And do we in fact see line 4 execute? Well, yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Okay, we see it executed right here. So that's not actually that useful. Well, actually, it is kind of useful. It is useful, but we need more, right? That's how it always is in programming. No matter what I show you, I want more. Okay, just like you guys. So when we call this function, we need an argument passed to it called body. I'm gonna call it body. I'm just gonna console log it for right now. Okay. So we're gonna run this command, and guess where body is gonna come from? Just like Charles said a moment ago, this is going to be captured by the function automatically. So we do hello class. And this value is going to show up inside of our add function as the argument body.
Yeah.
So you guys can see that on line 44, we console logs, I'm adding a to do, and then the second argument to this, and it's not console log, but we printed. The second argument to print is body, and we did in fact get that value. Any questions so far? In a moment, obviously, you guys are going to need to do more. You're going to need to have like do, undo, 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 something like that, okay? But right now, I'm just going to show you one, and I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, so what are we trying to do whenever we, I need my charger, hold on. What are we trying to do, guys, for this app right now?
We need to insert something into the database.
Can you show the table, the chart? We need to get something in SQL, guys, right?
Yeah. So, what's the command for making SQL? So if I was wanting to do it, actually, what we can do is we can. How do I show the? Oh my God, I don't know how your keyboards look. How do I show the?
Command Shift X.
No, let's do quick query. So if I want to do something here, I can do insert into. Does anyone remember what that syntax is? If I just want to do to-dos, insert. So it's insert into the name of the table, which is to-dos, and then you pass it the column names in parentheses. So I don't know, body, due date, and then you do values and hello class and due date. I think due date is just gonna be a number. Like this. So it says no result found, but if I go back to the database, what do I want to do?
Command Shift E.
Command Shift E. There we go. Sweet. So I now have a body and due date. Due date is a what do we made it? We made a text. Oh, you made a text. Okay. So it's a text field, so we can say whatever tomorrow, yesterday. You probably want to make okay. There's different ways to do due dates. SQLite's a little different actually than Postgres. I forgot. So we can just run this. That's a SQL we want to run. So we'll do that one more time. Insert into to-dos, and this is a column names. So we have body, due date, values, and then you just put the values here. Hello again.
complete to-do list, Charles, today? So we ran that command, we don't know what we got.
I have there. So now we just want to do this from the app itself here. So an add, I'm going to do same thing. But there's one really important thing about this. So insert into body, due date, values. So I do something a little different here. So the question marks mean replace it with something later. So when I do cur.execute, I can take a variable number of arguments, one argument after this, which is a list of things. So let's see if I can explain this correctly. So in this, I'll pass hello class. Oh, actually, let's do body. And due date, for now, let's just hard code it to today. Whatever date it is today. Today's the 29th, 28th, I forget. Let me do this. So the reason why we do this is really interesting. So we could just make a string. So I could do like SQL equals that, and you could do an f string here and pass in values here. That's what you might want to do. This is probably your first instinct, body, something like this. You never want to do this. Well, not never, but you really don't want to do this most of the time. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week when we talk more about databases. But there's a really famous comic about this. Does anyone know this comic XKCD? It's like the premier nerd comic. So after you learn how to program, you're like required to read this comic all the time. It's at xkcd.com. So he always does like some sort of stick things. I haven't read today's yet. Funny. But one of the famous ones is Bobby Tables. So here, this is a comic, but maybe I can explain this to you now. So this lady is calling her school and the school says, did you really name your son Robert, parenthesis, drop table students? Yes. And so the idea is that whenever you are sending SQL to a database, you need to be really careful that someone, especially when you're accepting user input, that someone's not going to try to hack your system. So this person's son's name is like Robert, drop table students. So if I just send that SQL, so if I just input the SQL here, insert into body, due date, values, blah, and parenthesis, drop table, the SQL database doesn't know what's up, so we'll just run that, and then boom, my entire database is gone. So this is a common thing called SQL injection. So this is one of the most common hacks in a database. So anytime you take user input, which is all the time in a web app, what if like for password, someone puts in like, oh, my password is blah, blah, parentheses, then select star from users. They can see your whole database maybe. So this is a very common exploit, and the easiest way to fix this is just to let the library handle it a little bit. If you use question marks, and you call cur.execute SQL, and you pass it these things, it'll do what's called a quick sanitization pass. Sanitize means to clean. So it'll make sure that there's no like parentheses, semicolons, and it'll try to like make sure that it's just text. It's not 100% perfect, but it's 99% perfect. And this extra security check helps mitigate the chances of someone pulling off a SQL injection attack. So web apps all the time, you'll always use some sort of sanitization like this. Now the second concept why this is hard is it's in parentheses and there's commas. So this is something in Python called a tuple. So there's a new data type that we never told you guys about called a tuple. It's exactly the same as an array, except you can't change elements in the tuple. So it's like a constant array. And you use this because it's faster than just passing an array, because arrays have to be editable and stuff. So things like this, you just pass a tuple. And the syntax for a tuple is just parentheses. It's those round ones instead of square ones. But where it's really confusing is, say we only were inserting one thing. I would have had to then done this, which is a bit
Requires
confusing.
a trailing comma.
You need to have at least one comma, because this is just like syntax. Unfortunately, if I did this, it wouldn't know that that's a tuple. So you have to add a comma, even if you have one thing. So it looks really silly, but that's how you know it's a tuple instead of just an expression inside parentheses. Anyway, so if we do this, we should be good. So let me run that. And then let's see, Python add. I have a syntax error. What did I do wrong?
Commit Charles thing.
Yeah, it's not, well, I have an error somewhere. Let's see, hold on, let's see. I have an error near parenthesis, insert SQL. Oh, sorry, I forgot to put to-dos. So this is also confusing that you have to. So I actually knew that was an error with a SQL string, by the way, because it says like SQLite operational error. So something's wrong with the SQL, not my Python. So I managed to get a computer charger. Great. It executes, it's run. Wait, it's not there. So I had an error in my SQL. I feel like it's getting to a database, but something's not showing. And here's the thing where you'll be glad that you're in a class. There's a magical thing you have to do called cur.commit. So if you're making changes to a database, if you're updating or inserting rows, you have to call .commit to actually save these things to the database. Sorry, con.commit. And you call it on the connection, sorry, not on the cursor. The cursor doesn't know anything. It's connection.commit. And then you see the charger. So anytime you're doing a write operation, except for create table, you have to do con.commit. And the reason why you do that, it's silly, but later there is a concept of transactions. SQLite doesn't do this very well, but later we'll do this a lot next week. For example, imagine that you're doing some sort of code for e-commerce. So like yesterday we had the Tiki example with inventory. So say like someone buys something, you have to decrease inventory by 1, you have to create the order details, and you have to like charge the card. There's multiple things going to multiple tables, and say something goes wrong along the way, like the credit card gets declined. What you want to do is you want to be like undo everything, like start over. So that the concept of that is called a transaction, where you have multiple writes in one bundle. So you say, okay, update inventory, set, whatever, update the bestsellers, create the order, create the charge, and then you do .commit, and all those things run. And if anything fails, it rolls back to the very first, as if nothing happened. And that's like probably the best feature of SQL databases. So if you imagine like, e-commerce is a good one because you always have inventory, but even things like if I like something, it creates a whole bunch of like comments or likes, or it updates a lot of tables. All these things you want to keep in sync. And so because of that, most databases have a .commit type of thing you have to call when you're ready to actually flush things to the database. That's reason one. Reason number two is you might often also have a lot of writes kind of lined up. So every time you send something to a database, it's actually a little bit expensive. So send, come back. It's better if I can wait, get all the things I want to do, and send them all at once. Which is another reason why we have the commit here. Both these things don't really matter for us now, but we have to deal with them anyway. So that's how we add something to the to list. So now we're almost done. So right now we have an app. We can do to-dos. Yes, computer chargers here. I would say the next thing we want to do though is the person that we want to, the customer we want to sell this app to is not going to have SQLite Explorer on their computer. So let's give a quick list command. So you saw in the instructions from here, we want to be able to do Python to-do wise list. Let's do Python. Shoot. We want to do list, so list all to-dos. So what's the SQL behind that? I'm sure you guys can come up with this one.
Select all from star.
Yeah, a select star. So let's make a new function, I don't know, here. Def list, takes no arguments. Sorry, uppercase. That's just the SQL we're gonna run. Just cur.execute SQL. Now, what do we do? We can't, I don't know what you might think that it's like something like this. I don't know. You actually have to, there's one more command that you have to use called cur. So fetch all like brings the things from SQL to this variable. You have to call these functions. And then we can just do print results. Do we already hook up list? No. So then we just hook up list. Oh,
An
it's,
extra semicolon, Charles.
I have a semicolon?
Yeah. The list function. Right above the fetch all.
Thank you. I'm too used to typing JavaScript. Right. So let's do Python use py. Oops. List. So now I get a nice thing of list. Now it's not very beautiful. One thing you're seeing here is these are actually tuples. So this is the same thing as from before. It's an array of tuples, a list of tuples. This is one of the rows. You might want to do this a little bit more beautifully, because now no one's gonna be happy with this. So we can do for row in results. And you can print out each row individually. It's a little bit better. But then you can go kind of like nuts with this. Let's see. I'm gonna borrow what Loy has here for his solution. So he has print colored row 0. So you can because it's a tuple. This is the 0. This is row 1, row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3. So we'll print the number in, what was it, green? And then we'll print the F row. Let's do row 1. Sorry, let me do without the colored first so you can see what's happening. So I'm just gonna do, sorry, F. I don't need colored here. Sorry, I'll do it without the color just to be a little more clear. This is a little bit nicer. So now I have the things here, and you can use color to change the color to green or red or whatever you like. And now we have a basic to-do app that has the main requirements. So that's as far as I'll go right now. I'll let you guys work through that. So to do this, to recap, first, we had to create a database here. This stuff is just to basically create a file in the current directory called database.sqlite3. It doesn't matter what you call this thing as long as you just use the same thing and the program knows what to find. We connect to it. We create the table. And then here's the program that runs. You can kind of skip the show help menu, but the important thing is we call this one library that we've imported at the top that maps the command line arguments to functions that we run. The two most important functions we have are add and list. And add calls an insert into SQL command, and list does the select star from and outputs to the console. If you ever have questions about what's in the database, you always have your SQLite Explorer. Click here, open database, pop this guy open. You can see the structure, and you can run commands here by hitting play. Now, in the database, in the application, in the assignment, we're going to ask you to later add something called project ID. You guys did a lot of database design yesterday with linking tables together. For this to-do app, we're going to make it pretty premium. So after you do all this, I think one thing that would be nice you can do is create the notion of projects. So you can have lots of to-dos and they're assigned different projects. And there's a separate table with, let's see, that's in the optionals. So there's more optionals. Oh, so yeah, so the two things we ask you to do is add projects and users. So you can assign to-dos to different people. So now you can use this app to working groups. And I also I added some jokes in here. You can add more commands, find out who to fire. So all people who don't have to do. So this is a little bit more of that SQL exercise yesterday. Yesterday I think you had to find employees without buildings and stuff like that. So here you can find users who do not have to-dos. So it should give you, there's some instructions on how to get started down here as well. But we haven't walked you through too much of it because we want you to figure it out.
Can you just go over the if statement again?
Sure. You mean in the main function?
Yeah. What's the main being?
All right, I can start a new file here. Hold on. Let me just make a new file. Whoa, what did I just type?
Control L.
Control L. Read only.
Switch from my terminal. Click that ellipse in the middle. Yeah. Click over to terminal.
I feel like I'm walking in someone else's house. Okay, so let me just make a new file. Let's show why. So touch just creates a new file, by the way. So here, this is just a blank Python file. I can say, so yeah, you don't really need the name if name equals main. Okay, let me just, so this is the line here. So this code just means run this if someone calls it from, if someone's directly called our app from the command line, this runs. The reason why you need something like this is, say here we have like def Sean. We can do stuff like this. We can do from Sean import. So let me call this hello. So what can you do? And then I can call hello from here. Sorry, where did it go? I think that should have worked. Sorry, I'm printing hello. Let me just return it right now. So this is, I'll make the program a little simpler. Do not show again. I don't know how to make this return. Let me just comment this out. Okay. So it says I am Sean because I printed this function from Sean called hello. If I call Python, and then if I call Python Sean.py, it does nothing. Sean.py doesn't have a main thing, but I can do if. Sorry, it's not this, it's. So if I do Python Sean.py, it says I was called directly. But it doesn't print that if I call it, if I'm just importing stuff from Sean. So sometimes you have a library that might be called by the code, or if you call it directly, you just want something to run. That's what this name main stuff is. So here, if I didn't wrap this in that if statement, because I'm importing it from a different file, it actually prints this. Let me run that one more time. It actually runs this, I will print this all the time. This is just code that runs whenever anyone reads this file. So you don't want to, generally speaking, it's this nice form to like wrap in here just to make sure no one just imported you and you don't want to run extra code. That's why the if statement exists. But what we're using here is just simply like, yeah, this is what runs when the program starts.
I just thought of it like as a render function kind of right now.
As a,
Always runs in this case.
yeah, it always runs. But to be honest, if you pick this out, it's still going to be fine. But it's just, you're almost always supposed to do this. Cool. As always, if you have questions, ask Lloyd.
You guys see the instructions, come on. Super easy.